an underground tunnel network stretching approximately 518 meters, a segment of about 195 meters running directly beneath the mansion, approximately 39 metric tons of narcotics seized, over 1,000 criminal drug case files reported missing. But what if the true horror lay not just beneath the surface, but woven into the very fabric of justice? Welcome to Border Watch Daily, where we uncover the hidden realities at the edges of our world. December 22, 2025, 4:13 am, Minneapolis, Minnesota. On paper, the address was untouchable. The mansion at the end of the block belonged to two Somali-American attorneys, Ayan Osman, 44, and Mahad Nur, 47. Their legal records were precise. They rarely appeared in public, their reputation carefully preserved, not as a brand, but as an impenetrable shield. In community rooms and legal clinics, their names had been spoken like a solemn promise. Ayan was the face, the calm voice that could steady a room, the one who could walk into a heated meeting and make people feel safe again. Mahad was the method, the strategist, known for his courtroom precision and immaculate paperwork that always seemed to land in the right place. They built a pedestal the city wanted to stand on. Over 1,800 civil petitions handled, 312 housing disputes resolved, and more than 90 high-profile appeals, many of them successful. For immigrant families, they were the people who knew the right form, the right deadline, the right clause, the right words. When eviction notices struck, they stepped in. When fears about status rose, they explained the process. When cases felt hopeless, they made them feel manageable. That formidable reputation is precisely why this street stayed quiet for so long. Behind the polished exterior, investigators believe the couple formed alliances with CJNG leadership, using their legal influence as cover, moving illicit products into the United States through clandestine routes from Mexico. Together, this network funneled more than 399 metric tons of cocaine and fentanyl into American communities. This wasn't through reckless street crime, but through a sophisticated structure designed to avoid attention. The attorneys didn't need to move narcotics by hand, they only had to keep doors open. They only had to make certain files disappear. They only had to ensure certain people and certain shipments stopped appearing inside the system. And the consequences were swift and devastating. More than $280 million vanished from community assistance programs. Outreach projects remained active for 5 to 8 years without producing any tangible results. Families waiting for support never received assistance. Case files were marked as resolved but were never formally closed. Now, combine that scale with one final hidden layer. Beneath the residence, investigators say, sat a corridor with no cameras, no logs, and no local oversight. Rotating private security teams worked shifts, while military-grade surveillance blocking equipment ringed the property and the tunnel, defeating local monitoring from the very start. The public saw a mansion. The team saw a protected stronghold. At 4:13 am, the directive was already in motion. The block remained asleep. Porch lights glowed. Windows were dark. The convoy rolled in without headlights. Space tight, timed perfectly, like a route that had been meticulously rehearsed. At 4:47 am, federal units converged from 3 directions. More than 250 Federal Bureau of Investigation and Immigration and Customs Enforcement personnel were assigned, a scale rarely authorized inside a residential district. The initial breach did not meet an ordinary household response. Reinforced doors slowed the entry, security shutters sealed internal corridors, and individuals posing as private guards moved into defensive positions. What unfolded was not chaos, it was resistance prepared in advance. Movement remained slow, deliberate, controlled. The confrontation lasted just under 12 minutes, a short span of time on a clock, yet heavy enough to redefine everything investigators believed about the couple who once stood in court as advocates of justice. When the last corridor was secured, no agent had lost their lives. Several guards were subdued, and what lay beyond the final barrier was no longer speculation, it was undeniable proof. Behind a concealed passage in the lower level, agents found the entrance to the tunnel system, reinforced, engineered, and unmistakably deliberate. Inside the underground chamber sat computer terminals, inventory scanning devices, sealed containers, and documentation records spanning multiple years. Stacked along the far wall were crates holding 99 metric tons of heroin and fentanyl, meticulously wrapped and catalogued for transfer, valued at over $550 million on the underground market. But the most devastating discovery was not measured in weight. 10 frightened, disoriented children were found, prepared for transport inside the same staging area where sealed crates were being processed. Nearby, agents recovered 72 concealed handguns hidden across compartments and storage areas, plus long guns and ammunition staged close enough to grab in seconds. Encrypted hard drives, legal correspondence archives, and shipment manifests tied the staging room to routes across multiple states. As the morning expanded, the total haul rose beyond the corridor. Across connected sites and vehicles, the seizure was tallied at approximately 39 metric tons of narcotics, including heroin and fentanyl, packaged with standardized labels and repeatable workflows. By sunrise, Minneapolis was no longer looking at a home, it was looking at a doorway. Minneapolis does not look like a battlefield, that was the point. The raid proved one thing early. The mansion was not the destination, it was a route adapter. Once a tunnel exists, the case stops being about a house and becomes about a schedule, an endpoint, and the cover systems that keep the route alive. For months, analysts watched the same pattern repeat. Late-night security rotations, unregistered vehicles, and movements beneath the ground that no homeowner could ever reasonably explain. The cadence was tight, between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. Cooling fans and silent generators ran when household energy use was lowest. Ventilation cycles, load ramps, the house above stayed quiet, but the system below stayed awake. That matters because tunnels are not built for drama. They are built for repeatability. Engineers and forensic teams entered the passageway and confirmed it was not an improvised escape route. It was a purpose-built underground system, designed over time, reinforced in stages, and maintained with quiet precision. The main reinforced segment ran approximately 195 meters beneath neighboring property lines, supported by steel bracing and concrete segments poured in sections. Electrical lines were routed through concealed conduits, and the larger network, investigators say, measured about 518 meters in total. When feeder segments and access runs were included inside the staging chamber, the detail that changed the entire scale appeared on an interior wall. 26 processing stations, each assigned to a numbered manifest series. Scanning devices recorded inventory codes, weight logs, and transfer timestamps. Every movement was documented with the discipline of a corporate ledger. Analysts later confirmed that over 312 recorded transfers passed through the tunnel during its period of operation, with an estimated market value exceeding $480 million. The rhythm was as steady as it was disturbing. 5 unmarked vehicles arrived in sequence, containers were scanned, catalogued and sealed, and the tunnel doors closed before sunrise. On the surface, the neighborhood never changed. Then, another terminal system appeared, tracking human movement, not freight. Using coded entries instead of names, the records reflected cycles routed toward coastal transit points, spaced in intervals ranging from 11 to 19 days. That line is what forced the case to widen, because Minneapolis didn't have to be the coastline to feed the coastline. It only had to be the node that stayed quiet while shipments and people moved outward along freight corridors, and the paperwork is what kept it quiet. Over 1,000 criminal drug case files were reported missing, misrouted, or marked resolved without clean closure. In practice, that meant scrutiny was delayed, hearings slid into gaps, and people who should be visible became invisible behind procedural terms. During a single 12-month span, more than $78 million in settlement transfers were routed through legal proxy accounts tied to entities that no longer existed on paper. This is how a city loses control without a gunshot. It happens in file rooms. By late morning, the command desk was no longer asking what was found under the mansion. It was asking what else the mansion touched. Do you think a network like this survives because of fear or because of paperwork? Minneapolis, Minnesota. The order came as a sequence, not a speech. Unit staged, locations assigned, because once the tunnel is real, you don't treat the mansion like the whole case. You treat it like the doorway, containment first. Road units locked down the grid with quiet positioning that forced every vehicle into predictable lanes. Nothing flashy, no panic, just control. Inside, Osman and Noor were separated immediately. Not for drama, but for preservation. Phones went into signal bags, laptops were powered down properly, then seized. Paper files were boxed and labeled in tight evidence order. Drawers were photographed before opening. Binders were handled like potential keys to the missing file problem. Because this strike was not only about what teams found, it was about what teams kept from disappearing. 7:08 a.m. North Minneapolis. A strip mall suite was entered. The sign claimed Immigration Consulting and Document Services. The waiting room looked reassuring by design. Behind the back office door sat an operational forgery line with printers, laminators, blank forms, identity templates, shipping labels, burner phone packaging, a workstation built to manufacture documents that move people and cargo through checkpoints, while the top floor of a law firm stayed clean. Agents recovered encrypted devices and manifests tied to transit routes across multiple states. 7:22 a.m. Northeast Industrial Corridor. A cold storage facility sat behind chain link and ordinary signage. Trucks came and went. Workers looked like a normal shift. Inside, pallets wrapped in plain film. A trained team cut samples, sealed them, packaging patterns matched dimension, label spacing matched the staging chamber, the workflow matched the tunnel, the seizure count grew again. The 199 metric tons in the corridor was a core load, not the ceiling. The 239 metric tons across the operation reflected what was staged to move next. 7:49 a.m. Downtown Minneapolis. A second legal office was entered quietly with court-authorized access. Beyond the conference table, diplomas, and tidy folders, agents reached storage, filled with ledgers, payment logs, transfer schedules, charities on paper, and shell vendors billing for services that never existed. The paperwork was clean enough to look legitimate if read one page at a time. When analysts lined pages up, the pattern appeared. This was not only a law practice, it was a routing desk. Names recurred across unrelated filings. Contact numbers repeated where they should not. Mailing addresses showed up across tenant disputes, immigration filings, and criminal case records that were supposed to be sealed. The missing file no longer felt missing. They felt relocated. 8:11 a.m. From the outside, it looked like routine rental space. But inside, it was a staging unit with crates, packaging, hidden weight-carrying compartments, and tools laid out for daily work, with labels matching cold storage pallets, barcode prefixes, matching seized devices, and notes mirroring the same nightly cadence, not from carelessness, but from consistency. By mid-morning, transport teams moved detainees, couriers, drivers, security personnel, document runners, and support roles that kept a system alive without ever looking like a kingpin. By end of day, the operation resulted in 96 arrests across multiple sites, including the primary targets and key support roles. By late afternoon, interview teams began building the human map, not just who showed up, but who had permission to show up, who had keys, who had access codes, who could sign for deliveries without a question. Those roles mattered more than muscle, because CJNG does not scale by shouting. It scales by assigning duties, auditing compliance, and replacing anyone who breaks tempo. That is why the support layer, in this case, reads like a payroll roster, not a gang roster. And as arrests stacked up, one sentence from the case file kept returning because it explained the whole structure. This was not misconduct. It was a parallel system of law built by two people who believed the law existed to serve them. 12:38 p.m. Minneapolis, Minnesota. Evidence split into lanes: the physical lane, weapons, narcotics, devices, packaging, tunnel engineering; the administrative lane, files, signatures, access logs, outcomes that never should have ended the way they ended. The second lane is where the temperature dropped, because the tunnel under the mansion was not the most important tunnel anymore. The real tunnel was the paper trail that made the underground route useful. Analysts opened binders like a vault, not for confessions, but for repeatable procedures. A client intake form that showed up too often, a notary stamp appearing where it should not, a mailing address recurring across unrelated cases, a set of case outcomes that always seem to land inside the same narrow set of procedural turns. And then the financial spine came into focus. Legal funds, intended for community representation, quietly diverted, documents certified through falsified approvals, grant programs active for years without closing reports. When analysts built the transfer graph, it was not one big wire, it was a drip system. Small transfers that looked harmless, repeated often, payments broken into predictable amounts, funds routed through charitable entities that appeared legitimate on the surface, vendor invoices, listing services that never occurred. During one 12-month span, more than $78 million in settlement transfers were routed through legal proxy accounts tied to entities that no longer existed on paper. The money did not sit in Minneapolis, it moved, and so did the cargo. Shipments moved through port channels using falsified customs declarations, protected under judicial immunity, a legal shell designed to keep inspection and challenge just far enough away to preserve tempo. In briefings, agents described the tunnel as connected to the border not by one continuous trench, but by the handoff structure that started under this house and ended at a border inspection desk. That line does not mean one straight tunnel to an ocean. It means the paperwork and routing structure can end off from a hidden corridor to freight corridors, then to coastal points in predictable cycles. The corridor is the start, the system is the weapon. By afternoon, the operational question became a cold calculation. If a respected address can hide 26 processing stations, 312 recorded transfers, and coded human movement cycles every 11 to 19 days, then the surface story was never protected. It was camouflaged. 6:33 p.m. Minneapolis, Minnesota. After a day like this, the command desk did not celebrate, because 96 arrests, approximately 39 metric tons seized, 72 concealed handguns, a 518-meter tunnel network with a 195-meter reinforced segment, and 10 children recovered is the kind of tally that makes national news. Yet, news cycles do not stop a pipeline. They only force it to reroute, which is why the final move was not a press conference, but a corridor shutdown, 7 p.m. A team hit a rented commercial unit outside the city limits. Inside were staging pallets arranged by route, wrapping stations, label printers, and a whiteboard with time blocks that mirrored the same nightly cadence. 7:46 p.m. Traffic units intercepted a transport vehicle tied to the same barcode prefixes: noches, control stop, patient search, cargo packaged like earlier, crates, consistent weight distribution, consistent label spacing, consistent discipline. 8:24 p.m. Digital analysts pushed the final correlation. Phone numbers recovered from the strip mall office matched contact data tied to document handoffs across multiple unrelated legal files. The same numbers appeared across categories that should never touch. This was not just a network of movers, it was a network of permission, because anyone can move a crate. Not everyone can move a file. That is where the attorneys mattered. They did not need to carry contraband, they carried credibility. The thing that makes paperwork glide, outcomes bend, and questions disappear. Minneapolis will spend months undoing what one raid exposed in hours, with audits, file reviews, reopened cases, families learning that resolved did not mean closed, and victim services for children who never should have been staged for transport. And the hardest part will not be concrete, it will be trust. Trust does not break like glass, it breaks like ice. Quietly, then all at once. A tunnel under a mansion is scary. A tunnel inside the system is worse. And if one trusted address could hide this much infrastructure for years, the only responsible question for every city watching is simple. What does your city treat as untouchable? Because that is where the next corridor gets built.